So, welcome to the new class. And today we are going to start our topic on corruption. And while we are discussing this topic, hopefully we will understand the dynamics of corruption for countries like Pakistan. Before we are starting this, let's give you a few background. Corruption will occur when there is an intervention by the government. So if we assume that there is perfect competition in the world, there will be no government intervention, and if there is no government intervention, there is no need to make any policy institute. So, but in microeconomics, we have studied that the markets are not perfect. Sometimes there is monopoly, sometimes there is oligopoly, duopoly, or some type of monopolistic competition. And 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 in macroeconomics, we have studied that sometimes markets are incomplete, markets have imperfect information. Sometimes, so in those cases, there is a need of institutes to be made by government who can regulate the policies and make sure that the government is the markets are working properly. So that gap in the market, so that gap in the market has created the discussion creation of institutes. So macroeconomics or economics started with the market forces and free hand, but the problem is market forces that sometimes do not work. They do not converge to equilibrium properly. So in order to make sure is a fair equilibrium exists in the world, so there is a need of institutes. So that's why we study governance. So governance is a function of government. So now, when there is a governance, it means these people have some power over the resources and they can regulate policies. So there will be motivation to use the institute in their own favor. So that will lead to corruption. So this is a previous background that economics have introduced in the institutes, and institutes can be corrupt. So let's start with this chapter. So importance of good governance. So World Bank defines that the traditions and institutes by which authority in a country is exercised for a common good. So institutions are made to create a common good. Means sometimes market are stuck at bad equilibrium, and that bad equilibrium is hurting poor or rich or all of them. So we need to move that equilibrium into a favorable situation. So how we do it? We create institutions which are actually their function is to provide common or public good. So by its function, this is its definition. So what does it include? It includes the processes by which authorities are selected, monitored, and replaced. So, okay, so it means first of all, the function of governance is to select people, uh, select people for the select people for the institute as the head of institutes. Okay, uh, so select people and how to and the process of how to select and process how they will work and process how they will replace. Second is that it will determine the capacity of the government to effectively manage its resources and implement sound policies. So this good governance describes how resources are managed and how policies are made. Lastly, it to the respect of citizens and the state of institutions, state for institutions that govern economic and social interactions among them. So it will interact between the people and the government to create an economic activity. So this is the definition of good governance provided by the World Bank. Now we go towards limitations of governance that is made by the limitations of the definition prepared by people or prepared by us. So governance works on the laws which are made by selected individuals in the parliament or any other relevant institute. So the governance that we discussed in the previous slide is actually dependent upon the laws which are made by humans. Okay, the problem with these laws is they are man-made and they are limited to the scenario and conditions. Means that the law that they made is subject to change. So they because we only know the things that we experience, and scenarios can change. Example is even Malik Riaz is accepting that he has to bribe his way to move his documents faster. So example is showing that even people in Pakistan are claiming that as a joke that they do corruption, they do bribing to function to fulfill their tasks. It means that laws are not perfectly made, and there are gaps that are hurting few people, and these few people are willing to pay bribe or do corruption to make sure that they are safe from the harm from the imperfect regulation. Okay, so when bribing is bad, then why it is acceptable for certain conditions? So it's talking about. So we already know bribing is bad. So why it is acceptable in certain conditions, just like the example above. So it means the laws are imperfect. Okay, let's go to the next. So there is an alternative provided by Islamic finance, that is maqasid al-Sharia, the rules made by Allah Ta'ala, or rules given to us by Quran and Sunnah. We call it Shariah, and the objectives of Shariah is maqasid al-Sharia. So we already discussed in the previous lectures. So I will go through it briefly. So maqasid Sharia literally means objectives of divine rulings of Allah given to us through his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and available to us in the form of primary source Quran and Sunnah. So every ruling that is given to us by Allah Ta'ala through his messenger, and which is available to us in the form of Quran and Sunnah. So these are all uh, rulings, and their objectives are objectives. So Sharia provides us guidelines for governance which are free of favors and applicable in all times. The difference between these human-made laws and Sharia law is that Sharia law is universal. It is applicable in all times, following the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it is made for every time that is following the prophethood. So that law is lawless, and the human laws are subject to change. So if we mix the human laws and adopt it using the Sharia law, then it will make our laws more appropriate and more universal, and it will help that there is no injustice done in the society. Okay, so let's go to the next point. So, what is an objective of a government? So, hence, the objectives of Sharia can be translated into objective of a government. So, these objectives are we have already discussed in previous slides. I will go. So, first objective is to increase the prevalence of justice. So, there should be justice for all. Okay, so first is prevalence of justice. So the word adl, which means justice, and its derivatives have been mentioned 53 times in Quran Majid. So Quran Majid have discussed to follow justice or adl in Quran 53 times. So it means it's very important. It means giving person his rights and punishing him for the wrong he has committed. So if there is a wrong done to an individual, give him his rights, and if the person has done wrong things, so there should be a prosecution, and we should punish him appropriately. So justice is the first objective of the government. So for that, there is the ayat is referenced there. It's Surat number 57, ayat number 25. According to it, we have already sent our messengers with clear evidences and sent down with them a sculpture and the balance that the people may maintain in their affairs in justice, and we sent down iron, wherein there is great military might and benefits for the people, and so that Allah may make evident for those who support him and his messengers unseen. Indeed, Allah Ta'ala is powerful and exalted in might. Okay, so this is talking about that there is a balance, means tarazu. So tarazu is there to maintain justice. So you need to measure the flow of rights, and you need to see who is being benefited and who is uh, affected by the injustice. So that you can create a balance. Next, we talk about ayat number 11, Surah 117. It's and your Lord would not have destroyed the cities unjustly while the people are reformers. So it is said that if the people are good in the economies, there will be no azmaish, or there will be no destruction. So azab will not come if you are doing justice. So previously, many nations have been destroyed because they were not doing justice. So second objective is education for all. So that education is a broad word here. So it means awareness, knowledge, access to schooling, everything is included in. So education for all means educated individual, which is good for them and which is not bad. So Quran Majid has talked about Amar bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar. It's a very common phrase. Amar bil Maruf means extend what is good, and Nahi anil Munkar means stop what is bad. So releasing them from the shackles of superstition. So when we give education to the people, they will know the reality, and they will extend the good, and they will stop the bad, and they will be released from the shackles of superstitions, which are stop hindering them in their daily life and their progress in Akhirat. So the Quran in Holy Quran, Surah number 3, ayat number 104, and they let there be arising from you a nation inviting to all that is good and enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong, and those will be the successful. So it means the criteria for successfulness is that you need to forward extend what is good and stop what is bad. So in Tafasis, there is an example available for this Amar bin Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar. This says that suppose there is a ship uh, in which the basement resides the poor people of the society. So here poor means poor in terms of resources, knowledge, and awareness of what they are doing and what are the implications to the society. Okay, they are short-sighted and self-centered. They are short-sighted, so that's why no need to extend it. But and on the upper deck, there are rich people in terms of fame, incomes, resources, and self-respect. Okay, so uh, they are rich people, and the ship is the actually economy. So let's settle it up. This ship is the economy where rich rich know where ship is going, while poor are sitting in the lower deck without knowing what their future holds. Okay, So and there is another thing that rich despise the poor, means they don't want to talk to them, they don't want to sit with them, so they don't allow communication with the poor, and so no poor can come on the top deck, and there's no communication between them, and and rich do not bother to see what they are doing, so they keep it to themselves. So it means the community who has education, who is skilled, who has knowledge, who has awareness of right and wrong, is sitting on the top deck, and they are thinking that we are controlling the economy, we are controlling the society, and there's no problem. There's no problem. So so they are not trying to communicate with the poor who are residing in the below deck. So they think that if we are working fine, the ship will not have any problems, and we will move it probably. And they think the poor, they don't have any resources, so they will not be able to disturb the functioning of the economy, and even if they don't know what is good or bad, since they don't have the control over the economy, we don't bother what they are doing. So because rich are thinking that we have to explain ourselves in akhirat, so we have to make sure that we are good, we don't have to explain that what others are doing, we have to give hisab of ourselves only. So what happens, one poor comes up to ask for water. He comes on the top deck, he wants water, and rich refuse to help him. So and push him down. So they refuse to help him. That go away. We don't have any. We don't want to help you. You are not rich enough. So we don't want to see you. So they don't help. So the poor goes down. Then the poor in the lower deck think that if we make a hole in the floor, we will be able to access water easily. Since they don't know what are the implications of their actions because they don't have any awareness, just like people who are in our community, that they break the traffic laws, they drive their cars or motorbikes the wrong way, or they park the cars improperly. They think that what will happen, it's everyone is doing the same thing, so it becomes a norm, so they will be able to access the water easily, since the rich are not bothering to see what poor's poor need and how they can help them. So what happens, uh, poor start to make a hole in the ship. So what happens when they make a hole, the ship drowns. So what is happening? So it means that if you think that as a rich, you are as a rich means as you are have access to awareness, you think what is right and wrong, and you are and you think that you only have to give your own hisab to Allah Taala, so you don't bother about extending what is good knowledge, means what is good in terms of Islam and what is bad in terms of Islam. What will happen, that the poor in the community will not have access to the good knowledge and the bad knowledge, so they what they're doing, they will do what they think is right. and that is their imperfect knowledge talking about. So what will happen, that they will do what is right, just like we think that the poor will beg for it, they will do stealing, they, so what will happen, the people who don't have control in the society will do some action that will lead to a destruction of total society. So this way, this tafsir example talks about that we need to do amar bin maruf or nahi anil munkar. So the third benefit, third objective of the government is provision of public benefit. So government has to extend benefit to everyone in the economy, distribute the benefit appropriately. So we call it masalaha, maslahat, means the responsibility of government is to secure benefits, mean masalaha, for individuals and preventing evil and harms, means in maqasid, facade. So we need to protect people from facade and give them maslahat. It's generally divided into three types. So there are three types of public benefit that can be distributed. So first is essentials, means zaruriyat. Then there is necessities, and there is embellishments. Okay. Then and it's the fourth one is show offs. So there are four types of needs that exist in the economy. First is essentials, then necessities, then embellishments, then show-offs. Okay, so first three are allowed in Islam, and fourth one is not allowed. So I will remove it as a red. So you can have essentials, you can have necessities, you can have embellishments, but you cannot have show-offs. So it means that there are, as a Muslim, as an Islamic government, so you have to fulfill three objectives, three public benefits. So now we'll define what are the meanings of these three. So let's explain it here. So essentials are the needs without which we cannot survive. Okay, so means if they are in short, then there will be facade or what we call it, restless or restlessness in the economy. So what does it mean that these goods include the simple commodities, means water, food, shelter. Okay, so if you provide the basic necessities, essentials, what will happen, that if you provide these, you will feel that there is peace in the society. But if these things are in short, then you will experience that there is injustice, there is a facade prevailing in the society. So these goods are needed, because without it we cannot survive. Okay, they are extreme necessity goods. What are the necessities? These are those commodities which make our lives easier. What does it mean by easier? So if, for example, you had a bicycle before, if you get a motorbike, it will be easier to go for you to come to your work. If you have a car, it will be further more easier to cover long distances in summer. So so it means having a car as compared to traveling on bus is necessity, as it makes life easier. Okay, so your functioning is easier if you have the access to a car. But what does it mean that that you could have done the work properly if you have a motorbike or a bicycle or bus. If the bus is available, you are functioning functioning your tasks using a bus, but it is making it difficult because your office is very far, it is taking a lot of time. So if you have a car, it will make your function easier. So having a car is a necessity, and giving a facility of a bus is a essential. And now we go towards embellishments. Embellishments are those commodities which make life beautiful. Means it means that if you are rich, then you can have appropriate things that can match your lifestyle. Means uh, having a big or luxury car for your need. So if you need one car, rather than you're buying a small car, you are buying a big car because you can afford it. Will covers in the embellishment section. So traveling on a bus is essential. Having a small or reasonable second hand or a new car is a necessity. Having a big car equal, which will fulfill your needs is embellishments. Or living in a big house is embellishment, but show off is having cars more than your need. So you need only one car, but you have a having a fleet of cars available in your home. So and you need only one house, but you have house in every city, and you are not using it anyways. So that will be show off. So in Islam, the first three are allowed and show off is not allowed. So for example of a car, I have given example for all four types. Next is that governance, and now we compare governance with corruption. Okay, so governance and corruption are not same thing. So public sector governance refers to the way state acquires and exercises authority to provide and manage public goods and services. So governance is how the public authority for officials public officials are employed, and they do their functions and provide goods and services to the society. And corruption is an outcome. Corruption is an outcome. It is a consequence of the failure of any number of accountability relationships that characterize the national governance system. So corruption is that if you have given a function to a government official to do something and he fails to do it, and because of that some individual is gaining a benefit out of it, so that will be corruption. Okay, so it means there is a failure in accountability, and he is not able to do any function appropriately. So corruption and development. So we will relate corruption with development. So what will happen if there is corruption, and what is the consequence with respect to development? So many empirical studies find a negative relationship between corruption and development. So previous studies have talked about that increase in corruption will reduce the development level. So how it will affect? First of all, when there is a corruption, then individual businesses will not do investment, because they know that if they do investment, they have to bribe the government officials so that their functions do properly. So it increases the cost of business. So foreign businesses will not come, or local businesses will not be able to function properly. Secondly, there will be high inequality. So if there is a corruption, then the public benefit will reduce and the private benefit will increase. So it means government officials will use the office for their own benefits, and they will not exercise the private, they will not exercise the public benefit. So what will happen? That in economy, the cash will go towards the rich or the individuals rather than the economy. So there will be inequality. Secondly, disincentive for innovation. So if there is corruption, nobody will try to innovate or work hard. So they will say that everyone is not doing any work, so we'll just bribe and pass the exam, or they will just bribe and and fulfill our work. We don't have to do any new thing. So then it will distort the public expenditure decisions. So if there is a corruption, then most of the public expenditure is wasted. So the public expenditure decisions are ineffective. So government is planning to, if the government is planning to do some investment, so if there is very high corruption, most of the investment is evaporated in terms of corruption, and very few portion of the cash is transferred into the project. It means the quality of the project falls. So it is a way of benefiting by harming a third person. So it means if a person is doing corruption, he is benefiting himself, but he is hurting a third person that he does not know. That's why we call it a victimless crime. So in this crime, we don't know who is the victim. So the problem is that if we know, so we already know that doing crime with humans come under hukuk ul ibad. So Allah Ta'ala said that you have to ask for forgiveness from every individual who you have harmed in the akhirat. So, but if you do corruption, you don't know who you have harmed. It may be whole economy. So how you will ask for forgiveness from everyone, or if you don't know? So if we are aware that we have to ask for forgiveness from the individuals who we have harmed, we will never harm them. Okay, so that Sharia, that maqasid Sharia, that rule of Sharia will restrict us to do corruption. Okay, so what is the definition of corruption? So corruption is use of public office for private gain. So if you are using a public office, means if you are public official, then you are gaining benefit for yourself. It means it's corruption. Means the public office is actually for benefiting public, but if you're earning a private gain out of it, it's a corruption. So what are the examples? It is mainly used in public sector because this sector has the ability to distribute benefits and impose costs on members of the society. So corruption is mostly possible in the public office because there is high authority involved with that job, because from that place you can distribute benefits, or you can distribute costs to the society. So you have an authority to do that. So it means you can direct the benefits from the public to yourself. So examples are bribery, which is giving money to alter behavior of the receipt; embellishment, theft of public assets, means you are stealing the public assets; fraud means deception for financial gain. You are just deceiving other people to gain financial benefit. And nepotism means you are favoring your own relatives or your friends, or you are employing your own people rather than following the merit. So these are the types of corruption. So what are the main types of corruption? That is bureaucratic corruption, which call it petty corruption, and there is a political or grand corruption. So what is a bureaucratic corruption? When subordinate public officials use authority transferred to them by the government to either extract bribes from private sector or embezzle public funds or commit fraud. So it means the public officials have less authority. They are subordinates. If they take bribe or steal public resources, it will come under petty corruption. And what is political or grand corruption? If the political elite the political elite can design or change the public policies for their own benefit at the expense of its citizens. Okay. So what does it mean? That if we if the political party has designed a policy which is harming the individuals but benefiting their people, it comes under grand corruption. Okay, how the corruption is measured? So the measurement of corruption. So currently, corruption is measured using following by following institutes. The first is Transparency International, which measures CPI, Consumer Corruption Perception Index. We call it. It's shortly written as CPI, Corruption Perception Index. So its rank is it ranks the countries. Then there is Control for Corruption Index. Okay, so it also ranks the countries. It's done by the World Wide Governance Indicators. Okay, so they measure this index. Third is Corruption Index by International Country Risk Guide. So that institute is called ICRG, and Worldwide Corruption Governance Indicators is WGI. Okay, so these are the institutes, three firms that measure corruption. Okay, so let's see. So before going forward, I will also show that there is another institute that summarizes these and give more detail. So let me open the page. So share screen and okay. So these are the indicators provided by World Economic Forum, and these are the indicators for Pakistan. So these are the latest values. So I will summarize. So they measure the quality of institutes. So better institute means lower corruption. So out of 100 score, Pakistan score is 47.7. Out of 100, their marks are 47.7, and they rank 107 out of 141 countries. So it means out of 141 countries, their position is 107, and the best performer is Finland. So they have the highest marks. So in the institutes, the first institute is security. Security institutes means law and order. So it includes organized crime, homicide, terrorism, and reliability of police. So out of all these, Pakistan has uh, uh, Pakistan is first in means first in terrorism because there is no incidents in 2019 according to them. Okay, and they're very high in Pakistan, so it's zero. So there were incidents in Pakistan. Then organized crime, it's 47.1. Homicide, it's less, it's 87.5. It's a good score. And for police services, 47.3. On average, it's 45.5. It's 126 out of 141. And Finland is top in this indicator. Then is social capital. Social capital includes, so Pakistan is 46.1. It's Pakistan ranks 105, and it's New Zealand, which is on the top. Then checks and balances, which includes budget transparency, judicial independence, efficiency of legal framework, freedom of press. So out of these, Pakistan scored 48.4, which is 72 out of 141, and Finland is on top. Then there is public sector performance, in which the burden of government regulation, efficiency of legal framework in settling disputes, and e-participation. So Pakistan is 47.8, and Pakistan position is 87 out of 141 countries, and Singapore is on top in this index. Then there is transparency, means incidence of corruption. So Pakistan has scored 33, which means 101 out of 141 countries, where Denmark is on top. So in terms of corruption, Pakistan is 101 out of 141. Then there is property rights. Property rights, intellectual property protection, quality of land administration. So Pakistan got score of 44.3, and person position is 100 out of 141, and then Finland is on the top. Then there's corporate governance. Corporate governance includes a strength of auditing and accounting standards, conflict of interest regulation, shareholder governance. This is mostly from business based. So Pakistan scores 64.3, which is 47 out of 141. New Zealand is on the top. Okay. Then there is future orientation of the government. How it is in terms of um, long sightedness on their planning. It includes ensuring public stability, responsiveness to change, legal framework to adopt digital business models, government long-term vision, energy efficiency regulation, renewable energy regulation, environment-related treaties to enforce. So Pakistan scores for 52 out of 52.3. Pakistan's position is 82 out of 141. So Luxembourg is on the top. So these are the indicators that measure the quality of institutes. If the quality of institute is falling, it means it is because of corruption or some other type of corruption. So we have discussed the measurement of corruption. Now we go towards how it is actually measured. So corruption is very difficult to quantify due to its intrinsic secrecy of legal acts. Because if we are able to quantify it, we could have caught the corruption easily. So since corruption is actually hidden, so it's very difficult to quantify how much corruption is done. We are only able to count corruption cases. We can only able to count corruption for the cases of unlucky bureaucrats who were convicted engaged in corruption. So we can only count the corruption for the cases where it is caught, but we cannot count the corruption for the cases where it is not caught. So it means it's very difficult to measure. For following us some of the problems in measuring, we end up measuring things like quality of policing or judiciary. Means if we are trying to measure corruption, we will end up measuring quality of institutes. That is shown in the website that we discussed earlier. And we only know about the corruption which is exposed or convicted. So we are only able to measure those which is caught. So it means technically the quality of institutes that are made to stop corruption explains the value of corruption. If the institutes are good, they will catch every corruption, then the value of corruption will be correctly measured. So now we are going towards a model of corruption to discuss how corruption is done and what are the parameters that explain the corruption in the economy. Okay, so it's a simple agency model of corruption. So let us consider a classical example of corruption by a tax collector. So suppose an example of a tax collector. Firms tend to bribe the corrupt tax official to declare lower profit to avoid tax. So firms you do bribe to the tax official so that he can write that the firm has low profit so that they don't have to pay higher tax. Firms are only liable to pay tax if their profit is more than zero. If they are earning profit, then they have to pay tax, and the tax will be T. So T into profit, T into pi will be the profit that they have to pay. So T is the tax rate in percentage. So we assume that P is the probability of succeeding in corruption, and the 1 minus P is the probability of government discovers the corruption. So if he is unsuccessful. If the corruption is exposed, the tax collector has to pay penalty F and the firm has to pay penalty G. So if it means if the bribe has been paid and the government catches it, the tax collector will pay a fine or go to jail, and the firm will have to pay a fine which is equal to G. Okay, it's both are positive. So normally the tax collector earn wages W, which can get and can get some W W naught, which is positive wage in the private sector too. So it means the wage of the public sector official is W, and using bribe or corruption, he can get W0 from the market. There are some tax collectors who are honest because of having higher moral value. So in the society, there are good tax officials and there are bad tax officials. We assume that eta, this sign eta, uh, is the fraction of tax collectors who are corruptible, and 1 minus eta are the honest. So there are few people who are corrupt and there are few who are honest. Okay, so hence firms have to be careful of risk before bribing. So it means they have to find the actual, they have to find who can be bribed before they are bribing. Otherwise, he will report to the officials and the firm will be fined. Now we go towards the model. So suppose this is the so what happens if an honest tax collector finds out that a firm is liable of taxation? The firm will have to pay full tax. Yes. If there is a honest tax official, then firm will pay the correct tax. What will happen if the tax collector is corruptible? So what will happen if the corrupt tax official is visiting a firm? What will happen? There can be two options shown in the diagram. What are the two options? First is they will do bribe or not to bribe. Okay, if they bribe, if they not bribe, it means that what will happen, how much profit that is left behind, that is 1 minus pi. So if they not bribe, then they have to pay tax. So what will be the outcome? That is profit after tax. That is 1 minus t into profit pi. Okay, and if they pay bribe and if they are successful, then they will earn how much profit? They will keep the profit, but they have to pay some bribe. So pi minus b. And if they bribe and they are caught, so what will happen? They have to pay tax. So 1 minus t pi. So they have to pay tax, and they are already given the bribe and they will pay the penalty. So 1 minus t pi is the profit after tax. B is the bribe which they have given, and the G is the penalty that they give to the government because they are caught. Okay. Now, the firm has incentive to offer bribe provided that the expected benefit from corruption is higher than the expected profit for the case of honest tax collector. So, what is the case? So, if they so the first portion, this portion is the returns if they pay bribe. So, what are the returns? Probability of successful bribe is pi minus b plus probability of getting caught 1 minus t pi minus b minus g. So this statement shows the net returns that they will get if they engage in bribing. And this is the net returns that they will get if they don't do corruption. So a firm will only do corruption if their earning of crime corruption is more than equal to if they pay tax. So we can simplify this equation and we will get b is equal to 1 minus p g less than equal to pi p t pi. So hence firm will only engage in corruption if the cost of corruption, which is bribe plus expected penalty. What is the expected penalty? 1 minus pg is less than the total benefit, which is savings from tax payments, which means how much cash they will save. So this is the equation that is they will balance to find if they want to engage in corruption or not. Okay, so if the bribe is high, they will not do corruption. If the chances of getting caught is high, they will not do corruption. If the penalty is high, they will not do corruption. But if the tax rate is high, they will do corruption. If the chances of getting successful in corruption is high, they will do corruption. If the profit is high, they will do corruption. Okay, now we'll go towards the tax collector side. So now we see that what makes the tax collector corrupt. How the tax collector will calculate its cost and benefit. So tax collector will think, should I do corruption or not to do corruption? If the tax collector does not do corruption, he will earn W. He will earn the wages that he is getting from the government, W. If he does corruption and if he success in corruption, what will happen? He will earn W plus the bribe that he will earn and the cost of hiding the bribe. Okay, so transaction cost. He have to hide that bribe in some other account so that nobody can find it. So there is a cost of hiding bribe. So it is written as beta B star. And in the below it is written that the more the bribe, more it is difficult to hide. Okay, and if it is caught, so he will have, he will have W0, what he have earned, minus W0 means what he will earn if he have a, if he is now doing job in private sector, because he's fired. So if he's fired, he's doing job in private sector. So W0 is the wages in the private sector and minus the fine that he's going to pay to the government. Now let's go to the next slide and see. So the corruptible tax collector has incentive to engage in corruption if expected income in the corruption is higher than the expected income in of being honest. So it means probability of success will multiply by wages plus bribe minus hiding the bribe plus probability of failure, private wages minus fine should be greater than government wages. If that is greater, it means he will do corruption. So if we simplify, the answer is the probability of success B minus beta B greater than equal to 1 minus probability of failure W minus W0 plus F. So it means if probability of success is high, he will do corruption. If the bribe is high, he will do corruption. If the cost of hiding bribe is low, he will do corruption. If the probability of being caught is high, he will not do corruption. If the government wages are higher than the private sector wages, he will not do corruption. If the fine is high, he will not do corruption. Hence, if this corruptible tax collector will accept bribe if it is expected benefit is higher than the expected cost. So, how we can control corruption? There are three major ways, or there are following factors. First is public sector wages. If we give them higher wages as compared to private sector, there will be no incentive to do corruption. Higher wages are so they will say that they are already earning higher wages. So if they do corruption, they will be caught and they have to lose these higher wages. Second, we need to monitor our workers. So monitor means we need to make institutes like NAB and FBR, and so that they can monitor the working of the government officials. So if we have good monitoring workers, it will increase the probability of being caught. So if you increase the probability of being caught, then they will not do corruption. Then legal punishments. If we increase the value of punishment, just like China did, they sentenced everyone who was in corruption so that it deterred every new person to do corruption. So we need to make sure that F and G values are very high so that nobody is engaged in corruption. So how we fight corruption? So like illness, corruption always be with us, but as this sad fact does not keep us from attempting to reduce this disease, neither should it paralyze the effort to reduce corruption. Corruption involves the question of degree. So this is a statement by one author in 1991. He said that corruption will always be there. So it's a question of degree. How much corruption should be tolerated? So we should not lose hope that we cannot solve it. It's a question of degree, how much we can solve. So let us try to think about a function that is related to the marginal social cost of corruption with the total amount of corruption is supply of corruption. So it means let us make a supply and demand model of corruption. So an increase in unit of corruption leads greater cost on society, hence is a positive slope. So on x-axis it is corruption, y-axis it is corruption, and on x-axis it's a cost on the society. So more corruption, more supply of corruption, more cost on the society. And also think about a function that relates to the marginal social cost of removing corruption with the total cost. It is costly to detect corruption if it is very low, but if it is common practice, it is easier and cheaper in terms of social cost. So it means if there is high corruption, it is easier to find. If it is very low, it is hidden, it is very difficult to find. So it means, so in terms of marginal social cost, it is the cost. If the corruption is increasing, the cost is high. If the corruption is high, the cost of finding corruption is low. Okay, and if corruption is low, the cost of finding corruption is high. So it means we need to find the equilibrium, how much corruption is there and how much cost is required to remove the corruption. So next slide we go. So hence we need to decrease the equilibrium quantity of corruption rather than think about 100% removal of corruption. OECD Convention 1999 talked about foreign public officials will face some penalty in corruption as a domestic ones. United States Convention Against Corruption 2005, 140 corrupt countries signed to assist each other in fighting corruption. Transparency International from 1998 tries to use media, government, and civil society to promote transparency in elections, public administration, and procurement and businesses. So they are trying to reduce the marginal cost of on society. World Bank since 1997 is providing assistance to reduce corruption. So they are working together to reduce corruption. Now we go towards the vicious circle of corruption and development. So whenever there is a development, what will happen? Um, there will be increase in wages. So when there is increase in wages, it means there is increase in profit. So when there is increase in profit, there is an incentive to do corruption. And when they do corruption, they will accumulate profits. Firms will save their earning. Let's annotate here. So what will happen? Mm, So when there is development, it will increase wages, sales, and businesses. Okay, so when there is increase in wages, sales, and businesses, what will happen? So there is an increase in profit income. So firms will also have higher profit. When there is high profit, there is an incentive to do corruption. So higher profit will promote tax evasion. So they will try to evade tax because they have a high profit. So tax evasion leads to corruption. So when they do corruption, they will save their profits. So by doing corruption, firms will save capital, means they will save the profits, they will not pay the other tax. So they will build capital. So that is capital accumulation. So that accumulated profit will be invested somewhere in some other business or in same business. That will lead to increase in jobs, increase in businesses, increase in production, and it will lead to development again. So it's a circle. So development and corruption will follow each other. So let us draw the diagram for this. So I will go towards, let me save it first, save and clear. Let's see on the whiteboard. So there's a theory that describes this. So there's a on y-axis and there's an x-axis. We show that. So here on the y-axis we'll write corruption. Okay, and on x-axis we write development. Okay, so what will happen initially when there is an increase in development? So country is developing, so they are immature, their policies are weak, so they are also developing their policies. So initially when the development occurs, there is an incentive to do corruption because the policies are weak. So initially development will increase corruption in the society. So what will happen with the time, the government will find appropriate policies that can stop corruption, and they will start catching the corrupt people, and in further development it will reduce the corruption. It will reduce the corruption with the development. So it will lead to a inverted U-shaped curve uh, that explains the relation between corruption and development. So it means this relation is known as Kuznets curve. So Kuznets described that the relationship between corruption and development. It explained that the relation between corruption and development is not linear. Means that at initial phase, development will induce corruption, and at later phase, development will deter corruption. So this is Kuznets curve. So this explains how development and corruptions are related to each other. So this was the discussion of corruption for today. Hopefully you understood the topics that are covered in this session, and later on we will continue with the applied research side discussion of this topic.